The sky was red with fire as alien ships filled the air above Earth's last base. Alarms screamed through the broken halls while smoke curled from fallen towers. Soldiers shouted and ran to their posts, but they were too few and too tired. War had gone on too long and hope was now thin like paper. Sergeant Rayner stood at the center of the ruined command room. His human face was covered in dust and blood. One eye was swollen shut, but the other still burned with fight. Around him, younger soldiers waited for orders. Some were shaking. Some had stopped blinking. They had seen too much death. Beside him, a tall alien woman named Vera gripped her plasma spear. She was not human, but she had bled for humans more times than she could count. Her armor was cracked. Her breathing was heavy. Yet she stood with Rayner as always. She looked at the radar and saw red dots moving in fast. "They've surrounded us, human," she whispered, trembling. Rayner didn't flinch. He looked out the shattered window where enemy troops landed in waves. Machines hissed. Cannons aimed. The enemy had more numbers, more weapons, and more confidence. Rayner's fingers curled around his rifle. His voice was low and steady. "Good," he growled. "Now I don't even have to aim." The younger soldiers stared. Was this madness or bravery? No one knew. But Rayner smiled like a man who had seen the edge and decided to jump anyway. The sound of marching boots and metal claws grew louder outside. Vera's hands shook, but she did not step back. She had followed Rayner into impossible battles before. He always had a plan. Even when there was no plan, he made one. He was the kind of man who turned retreat into a trap and made defeat look like a step toward victory. Rayner turned to his small crew. "Listen close," he said. "They think this base is dead. They think we're just broken bones in the dirt, but we're still breathing, and that's more than enough to kill them." They looked at him with wide eyes. The words felt like fire in their chests. Maybe they would die here, but maybe they would make the enemy bleed first. Maybe they would show them that humans were not prey. They were not soft, not weak. "Vera," Rayner said, "you ready?" She nodded without a word. Her spear lit up with a blue spark. She moved beside him like a shadow. They had fought together for too long. They no longer needed to speak to understand what to do. One look was enough. Outside, the enemy commander raised a fist. Hundreds of warriors stopped. Their armor glowed like sharp stones. Their orders were clear. Crush the humans. Make them an example. End this war tonight. Inside the base, Rayner pressed a button on the old table. It opened a secret hatch in the floor. Below it was something no one else knew about. A weapon not tested. A machine made by humans and aliens together. A last hope buried in silence. "I didn't want to use this," Rayner said. "But they've asked for it." The team followed him down into the dark tunnel. The walls were carved with symbols, some human, some alien. Vera's eyes widened when she saw what waited at the end. It was massive, like a beast asleep in chains. Rayner smiled and touched the side of the weapon. "Wake up, friend," he said quietly. A hum began to rise. Lights flickered on its chest. The machine began to move. And outside, the enemy took one step too far. The ancient machine shook as it came alive under the base. Its metal limbs moved slowly at first, then faster. Blue lights blinked along its spine. Dust fell from the ceiling as its core started to hum louder. The soldiers stared in silence, not knowing whether to fear it or trust it. Rayner stepped forward and placed his palm on the control panel. His ID chip lit the system green. The machine responded with a deep, rising growl. It had not been activated in years, but it remembered his touch. It was built from both Earth steel and alien code. It was something the enemy had never seen before. "This is Project Groundbreaker," Rayner said. "They'll regret coming here tonight." Vera circled the machine with wonder in her eyes. Her people had helped design the fusion engine inside, but they were exiled before it could be tested. Now she realized Rayner had saved it all this time, waiting for the moment when there were no other choices. Outside, the enemy forces moved closer to the entrance. The walls of the base shook with each blast as the outer defenses were destroyed. Sparks rained from broken lights. The base was falling apart piece by piece. But inside the tunnel, something powerful was being born. The younger soldiers loaded, weapons with shaking hands. They didn't understand the machine fully, but Raynor's voice gave them courage. If he was still calm, maybe they could be too. They looked to him not just as a leader, but as their last hope. Raynor spoke clearly. It's not about numbers, it's not about fear. It's about making them wish they never stepped on our ground. He climbed into the control seat of the groundbreaker. The machine stood like a giant war god, 10 meters tall with thick armor and heavy arms. Its chest had a rotating cannon that began to spin. The tunnel widened as its feet stomped toward the elevator shaft. Vera pressed the button that raised the lift. The ground above cracked open. Light from the burning sky poured down into the chamber. Wind rushed through the gap. The enemy soldiers turned as they heard metal footsteps rise from the earth. One alien officer barked a command. Troops formed into a line. Their weapons pointed toward the smoke. They expected tired humans, maybe a final charge. But what came up was not what they were ready for. It was a walking fortress with rage in its chest. Groundbreaker stepped into view. Its cannon pointed forward. From its shoulder launched a signal flare. It painted the sky red. Every soldier who could see, it knew the humans were not done yet. They had more fight left than anyone thought. Raynor's voice came through the speakers. You think surrounding us ends the fight? You just put yourselves in perfect range. The first wave of enemies charged forward. They screamed in alien, tongues trying to overwhelm with fear and fire. Raynor pushed two levers and the cannon roared. The sound shook the hills. The front line of enemy troops vanished in a storm of light. Vera jumped down and led the ground troops. With Raynor taking heavy fire, she could focus on cutting down anything that slipped past. Her spear moved like lightning. Each step she took was a promise that no one would fall alone today. The human soldiers followed her into the chaos. They screamed with every shot, but they did not run. The fear in their chests was real. But so was the fire. They fought with broken helmets and torn boots. They fought because they still could. Raynor laughed as the second wave approached. Come closer, he said. Let me show you what humans do when we're cornered. The battlefield outside the base had become a storm of smoke, fire, and screams. Metal clashed with energy blades. Blood soaked the broken ground. The alien invaders, proud and powerful, now fought with panic in their eyes. They had never seen such resistance from a dying base. Raynor moved the groundbreaker like a hunter in the dark. Its heavy steps crushed the enemy beneath its feet. Its cannon spun and fired with burning light. Each blast sent a shockwave that shattered walls and bodies. He was not fighting to survive. He was fighting to punish. Vera fought with speed and fury. Her spear danced like wind and flame. Her eyes scanned every corner, searching for weak points. She took down 3 enemies with one move and kept going. She felt no fear anymore, only fire in her chest. The human soldiers around her were bleeding, limping, and shouting, but none of them stopped. They moved like shadows through the ruins. They set traps. They fired from cover. They dragged the wounded back to safety and returned to the front. They knew they had no backup coming. This was it. One of the enemy commanders gave a signal to retreat. Their ships began to hover, ready to escape. But the skies were not safe. Hidden turrets in the mountains came alive. Blue lasers sliced through the air. One ship exploded before it could even lift. Raynor saw it and smiled. Told you we had teeth left, he said into the comms. From the east, a new threat appeared. A massive alien war beast with armored scales and laser eyes. It stomped forward like a living tank. Its roar cracked the air. The enemy cheered as it charged. They believed it would crush everything in its path, but Raynor was already turning. He aimed the groundbreaker directly at the creature. The cannon locked in place. A long hum built in the air. Then the blast came. It struck the beast in the chest and knocked it back 10 meters. But it did not fall. Vera ran toward it without waiting. She leapt and landed on its back. Her spear pierced its armor again, and again. The beast roared and spun, trying to throw her off. She held tight with both hands and screamed in rage. Her voice cut through the battle. "Fall, monster," she shouted. "Fall now." Raynor fired again. This time the shot hit the neck. Sparks and black smoke flew from the wound. The beast dropped to one knee. Vera jumped off just before it crashed to the ground. The ground shook like thunder. The enemy began to scream and scatter. The human side pressed forward. Their bullets found targets. Their fire was true. What they lacked in numbers, they made up in fury. They were not fighting to win a medal. They were fighting to stop a nightmare from reaching their last home. Raynor opened a channel to the enemy command. His face appeared on their screens. His voice was low, but clear. "You thought we were weak. You thought we were finished. Now look at your army. Look what's left." The enemy commander stared in silence. His hands shook as he watched his soldiers fall one by one. His second-in-command begged for retreat. But retreat meant shame, and shame was death in their culture. The skies darkened again. Another wave was coming. But this time, Raynor's team was ready. They had tasted fear and turned it into fire. They had stood against giants and made them bleed. The next wave would face not just weapons, but warriors with nothing left to lose. Vera raised her spear to the burning sky. Raynor whispered to the machine, "Let's finish what we started." The enemy launched a second wave, larger and more furious than the first. From the skies came new dropships, each filled with warriors wearing thick armor and red visors. They fell like burning meteors, crashing into the ground with thunder. The battlefield lit up again with gunfire and screams. Raynor moved the groundbreaker forward to meet them. The massive machine took hit after hit but did not slow. Its arms moved like towers smashing through walls. The spinning cannon locked onto groups and sent them flying. He had become the storm inside the storm. Vera ran along the ruins, directing squads and clearing paths. Her voice kept them steady. "Left flank," she called. "Hold the tower. Keep the line." Her armor was cracked, her leg cut, but her fire never dimmed. She was fighting for every human she had come to protect. The alien troops used sonic weapons and gravity bombs. The ground trembled with each pulse. Human soldiers were thrown into the air. Some never stood back up. But others crawled, bled, and fired back. They had made a choice. No more running. No more fear. From inside the base, engineers sent one last signal. An old satellite cannon in orbit had been fixed. It had one final shot left. It could only fire once, and it would take 5 minutes to charge. Raynor received the countdown and smiled without joy. "That's all the time I need," he said as he pushed the groundbreaker deeper into the center of the chaos. Vera's eyes locked onto a group of enemy officers hiding behind heavy shields. They were calling shots and marking targets. She knew if they stayed alive, her side would fall. Without a word, she rushed toward them alone, using speed as her only shield. Blades flew past her. Plasma scorched the air. She ducked, rolled, and leapt between broken walls. Her spear lit up as she leapt from above, crashing down into the middle of their defense. The first enemy dropped before the others even saw her. They fought back, but she was faster. 2 more fell. One tried to run, but Vera threw her spear through his chest. The squad lost control. Their command stopped. Confusion spread like a virus across the battlefield. The human side pushed harder. Raynor saw the shift and opened the comms again. 3 minutes, he called out. Hold until the skylights. Up, but one of the human squads fell under fire. Their leader was gone. Raynor turned the groundbreaker in their direction and used his left arm cannon to wipe out the attackers. He covered the squad with his own body until they got back on their feet. Smoke rose from every side now. Screams mixed with battle cries. It was no longer a war. It was survival. The kind where heart mattered more than skill. And humans, when cornered, had the fiercest hearts of all. The countdown reached 30 seconds. The satellite cannon above Earth locked onto the enemy's main ship. That ship had been watching from afar, confident in victory. It never expected humans to still be standing. It never expected resistance to reach this point. Rayner gave the order. All units clear the center, light is coming. Vera fell back, limping from a cut to her side. A soldier grabbed her arm and helped her move. The troops around them pulled back behind cover. Above them, the clouds began to glow, and then the sky cracked open. The sky turned white as the satellite cannon released its single shot. It was silent at first, a beam of pure energy falling from the stars. Then the impact came. The enemy command ship didn't explode. It vanished. One moment it was there, floating proud. The next it was dust in the wind. A wall of energy spread from the point of impact. Enemy troops near the center were thrown back like leaves in a storm. The ground cracked open. Fires were blown out. Even Rayner had to brace the groundbreaker to stop it from tipping over. The human soldiers stared at the sky. The silence after the blast was louder than war. For the first time in days, they saw the enemy pull back. Some ran. Some dropped weapons. Their leaders were gone. Their power broken. Their fear had arrived too late. Vera pressed her hand against her side. Blood oozed between her fingers, but she smiled. She looked up at the clouds parting slowly. Behind her, the soldiers began to cheer. It wasn't loud, it was tired, but it was real. They had survived the second wave. Rayner climbed out of the groundbreaker. His armor was blackened from heat, his voice rough from smoke. He didn't speak for a long time, he just looked at the wreckage, the bodies, and the faces of the ones who were still breathing. "They'll send more," he said at last. Vera walked up beside him. Her steps were slow, heavy but steady. "Then we'll bury them too," she answered without blinking. The humans gathered around. They set up walls from broken machines. They pulled weapons from fallen enemies. No one waited for orders. They knew what to do. Every hand worked, every eye stayed alert. The war was not over, only paused. Rayner turned on the base's long-range comms. Static filled the air before a weak voice came through. It was a young officer from another outpost. His message was broken, but clear enough. "We saw the blast. Are you still alive?" Rayner answered with steady calm. "Alive and armed," he said. "Tell the others, the East Base still stands." Across distant camps, the message spread. Morale rose like a fire in dry grass. Humans who had lost hope now had reason to fight. They heard the story of the groundbreaker, of the alien who fought beside a human, of the cannon that tore the sky. But news traveled to the enemy as well. The high command of the invaders now knew their strongest wave had failed. Their honor had been stained. Their leaders burned in orbit. A new force would come. One stronger. One final. Vera knew this before Rayner even said it. She could feel the change in the wind. The next battle would not be about holding ground. It would be about ending the war itself. Either the humans would stand tall or they would fall forever. Rayner stood before his troops. His voice cut through the wind. "They'll try to erase us, but they can't erase what we've already done. Remember that when they land. Remember who you are." Vera raised her weapon and the others followed. Swords, guns, spears, even broken pipes. Anything they could hold became a promise to each other, to the fallen, to Earth itself. Above them, the stars began to move again. The night after the battle was quiet, but no one slept. The base had no roof left, only beams and broken stone. Soldiers sat by small fires, cleaning weapons and checking wounds. The silence was not peace. It was preparation. Rayner stood alone on the damaged platform above the base. His eyes scanned the stars. He was not looking for beauty. He was looking for shapes moving too fast. He was looking for the next wave. Below him, Vera spoke with the engineers. They had collected scraps from enemy tech. Using both human and alien parts, they began building traps, turrets, and portable shields. There was no luxury left, only function. A young soldier named Liko approached Rayner. His voice was shaking. "Sergeant, do you think we can win again?" Rayner didn't answer right away. He looked down at the camp, then at the tired young man in front of him. His voice was flat but strong. We don't win by hoping. We win by preparing. The next day, scouts returned with reports. Enemy forces had landed 2 valleys away. Bigger ships, heavier weapons. The kind used for final attacks. The kind sent only when an enemy was tired of playing. Rayner gathered everyone near the half-destroyed command tower. Some leaned on crutches. Some had bloodied bandages. But they all stood. There were no civilians left. Every person here was a fighter now. They're coming again, Rayner said. And they'll throw everything they have at us. So we throw everything back. Vera handed out maps. On them were circles, marked zones, and numbers. Each squad had a role. Some would guard the cliffs. Others would hold the gates. A few would be deep underground, waiting to strike from the shadows. The groundbreaker was being repaired with whatever metal they could find. It had taken too much damage to walk again, but its weapons still worked. Rayner turned it into a turret, planting it in the center of the base like a steel god. Vera worked without pause. Her body was covered in bruises and cuts, but her focus never slipped. She taught new recruits how to use alien weapons. She rewired broken mines. She made armor from enemy shoulder plates and duct tape. Hours turned into a day. The warning siren screamed as the new enemy force was spotted. Dozens of ships filled the sky. They blocked the sun. From a distance, they looked like a single dark cloud, but everyone below knew what they really were. Rayner looked toward the sound and raised his rifle. Every soldier took position. Some knelt, behind barriers. Others hid in ruined towers. The silence returned. But this time, it was not fear. It was steady breathing before a storm. It was the sound of hearts beating in the same rhythm. The first blast hit the outer wall. Stone flew in every direction. Enemy forces poured in like a flood. But the traps worked. Lasers cut through armor. Grenades burst from under rocks. And humans fought back with fire in their eyes. Vera stood in the center, blocking enemy paths. With her spear. One by one they came at her. One by one they fell. Her armor was smoking, her hair wet with sweat, but her feet never moved back. Rayner, from behind the cannon of the groundbreaker, fired again and again. "You want Earth?" he shouted. "Come and take it." The battlefield had become a burning maze of smoke and shattered metal. The enemy stormed from every angle trying to break the lines, but the humans didn't break. They didn't bend. They fought like fire had filled their veins. Rayner aimed the groundbreaker's cannon with both hands. His arms shook from the heat, but he didn't stop. Each blast sent shockwaves through the ground. Enemy vehicles flipped into the air. Their soldiers scattered like dust. Vera fought at the western wall. Her spear was now stained dark, her armor cracked and scorched. She moved like a storm, fast, sharp, impossible to hold. Around her, wounded soldiers found strength just by seeing her stand. The enemy released flying drones to blind their targets. But the humans had planned for that. Mirrors were placed across the field. When the sun hit them, it bounced light straight into the drone sensors. They dropped like stones. Rayner saw a heavy tank roll toward the east line. Its plasma cannon glowed blue. If it fired, it would rip through the base. He left the groundbreaker cannon and sprinted with a satchel bomb in hand. Dust rose behind every step he took. He slid beneath the tank just as it locked its target. He placed the charge under the core, pressed the button, and rolled out. The tank exploded behind him. The flames lit up the sky. He kept moving forward, not looking back. Vera spotted him from the tower and smiled. "Still showing off," she whispered as she threw her spear through another armored alien's chest. Liko, the young soldier, was pinned down near the gate. 2 enemies cornered him behind a wreck. His rifle was out. His hands bled, but he refused to run. He picked up a shard of glass and stood up to face them. Before they reached him, a blast from above ended them. Vera had jumped down from the wall. She grabbed Liko and pulled him into cover. "You're not dying today," she said without blinking. More enemy drop pods crashed into the north wall. The humans were pushed back 10 meters. The enemy laughed in their own tongue. They thought the tide was turning. But Rayner had saved one last trick. From deep under the base, an old missile system had been reconnected. Not perfect, not clean, but enough. Rayner gave the order and fired. The missiles launched with smoke and flame. They curved over the base and struck the enemy's reserve ships. The sky turned orange. 3 enemy carriers burned in midair. One crashed into the hillside and shattered the cliff. The noise was endless. The fire could be seen for miles. Hope lit every soldier's heart again. Rayner shouted through the comms. "No more running, no more hiding. Push them back." The humans charged. Guns, blades, fists. They moved like one body. Even the wounded joined the line. Vera led from the front, covered in ash, her spear now just a rod of glowing metal. She moved with fury in every step. Rayner stood beside her now, shoulder to shoulder. Together, they charged into the final wave. Their voices were not loud, but they were steady. Their eyes were not afraid. Behind them, Earth stood tall, broken but unbowed, and before them, the enemy began to fall. The ground shook as the final charge began. Smoke covered the ruins, but through the haze, human and alien warriors clashed. It was no longer a battle of guns alone. It was fists, knives, teeth. A war stripped to its core. Rayner fought with blood in his eyes. His shoulder was dislocated, but he swung a broken pipe like a sword. Around him, soldiers followed. Not because they were ordered. Because they believed this was the end that must be earned. Vera's spear was gone. She now wielded a jagged blade taken from a fallen enemy. Her left arm was limp, but her right still moved with deadly grace. She carved a path toward the enemy, banner step by step. The enemy commander stepped into the fight. He was twice Rayner's size, covered in armor with a double-edged staff pulsing with red energy. His voice growled across the field. "You are dust. You are nothing. You will be erased." Rayner walked toward him without stopping. He didn't reply with words. He threw the first punch. Metal met flesh. Sparks flew. The two clashed like ancient titans. No tricks, no backup, just fury against fury. Their fight tore through rubble. The enemy commander struck with speed and power, but Rayner matched every hit. His bones cracked, but he stood. He bled, but he smiled. He remembered every friend lost, every child saved, every reason to keep standing. Vera watched from a distance. She wanted to help, but she saw the look in Rayner's eyes. This was his fight, his final promise to the people behind him. So she turned instead to the battlefield and screamed a single word. Charge. The humans surged forward again. The enemy lines broke. Without their commander, they had no order. Some dropped their weapons, some ran, but most stood and fell. The ground drank from both sides, but Earth's people would not fall first. Rayner was knocked to the ground. The enemy raised his blade high, ready for the final strike, but Rayner grabbed a sharp stone and jammed it into the alien's knee. The commander stumbled. That 1 second was all Rayner needed. He stood, grabbed the enemy's own weapon and drove it through his chest. The alien gasped, dropped his blade, and collapsed. The light in his eyes faded. The battle was over. Silence returned. But it wasn't. Empty. It was filled with the sound of breathing, crying, laughing. The humans had won. Not because of numbers, not because of better weapons, but because they refused to fall. Rayner dropped to his knees. Vera ran to him. She held his head as he gasped for breath. "We did it," he whispered. "We held the line." "You did. More than that," she said, her voice shaking. "You reminded them who we are." Liko walked forward holding a torn flag. It was burned, dirty, but still whole. He raised it high above the ruins. Every soldier turned to see it, and in that moment, they all knew what they had done. They hadn't just won a battle. They had carved their story into history. Rayner stood, leaning on Vera. "Let them come again if they dare," he said. "We'll be waiting." And under the red sky, beside the broken base, the warriors of Earth stood together, unbroken,